So this week's Parshat Vayeitzei, we catch up with the third of the forefathers, Jacob, or Yaakov, as we call him, and he has just fled from his brother Esav after stealing the blessing from him. So now he's run away and he is on his way down to his future father-in-law's land. And he is looking for a wife. So he is on his way to Haran and he spends the night there. He encounters the place. It calls it Hamakom. And as we're going to see, it is the site of that the Beit HaMikdash is going to be on. It's a very holy place. So he then takes stones and he arranges them around his head and he lies down and then he dreams. And this is the famous dream of the ladder with the angels coming up and down. And so he sees Hashem at the top of the ladder, and he says that the ground that you're lying on, I will give to you and your descendants. Your offspring will be the dust of the earth, and you shall spread out powerfully, and all of the families of the earth will bless themselves by you and your offspring. So this is the same blessing that Avram got. So now Yitzchak has become almost like the firstbornship has been confirmed now that he's gotten the blessing. And the very first thing, sorry?
Yeah, cool.
Yes, thank you. So his firstbornship is confirmed now that he has the blessing. And the very first thing that he gets is that Abrahamic blessing, which is that sort of lineage of the Jewish people and what we're actually supposed to be doing. So, and he says, I will with you, I will guard you, and I will not forsake you. So, Yaakov then awakes from his sleep, and he is pretty shocked that it was a super holy place and he had slept there. So he becomes frightened and he says, how awesome is this place? There's none other than the abode of God. And he says, this is the gate of heavens. Okay, which is quite a cool image. I'll tell you why it's super cool later. So he gets up and he takes the stone that he had placed around his head and sets it up as a pillar. So who noticed something?
Awesome.
Cool. So basically, he had put down many stones before, it's in plural, and now it says he picks up the stone. And so Rashi says that it all fused into one stone. But now think about how cool the imagery is, right? So he's got this ring of stones that have now all become one stone, which he then sets upright as a pillar. This is the gate of heaven. It's literally a stargate. How cool is that? Is that not such sick imagery? Yeah. Yeah, cool. So, um, then Yaakov takes a vow and he says, if God will be with me, guard me on my way that I'm going, will give me bread to eat and clothes to wear, and I return in peace to my father's house, then I will, whatever I have, I will tithe repeatedly to you. So this is interesting for those of you who listen to the end of well, the sessions we had on the end of the Torah. This is actually the root of where we get the obligation to take Misa from. And the interesting thing is, if you take a look at his life, these conditions that he sets out never actually get fulfilled during his lifetime. It only gets fulfilled during the lifetime of his descendants as they're about to go into the land of Israel. And that is when they get, yeah, and that is when they actually get the law of tithes. And that's why we get all of those before we come into the land, which is fascinating. And then what is interesting, we do see he does a type of like tithing, which is giving a 10%, because he gives 10, basically he gives, he consecrates Levi, the tribe of Levi, to be tribe to Hashem. So how do we get that? Because he has 12 children. So it says that because the two children of Joseph were considered like his children, so you've got 14 there. And the first child of every mother is already consecrated through the Pidyon Haben. Then you're left with 10. And so 10% of 10 is 1, and that is the tribe of Levi. I didn't expect to be doing maths this late at night, but here we are. Question? No, cool. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff that we packed into there. So now he lifts his feet up and he goes towards the land of
He
the
lifts his
Easterners.
feet up.
Well,
That's
yeah.
weird too.
So Jacob lifted his feet. I don't
That's
know.
a weird thing.
Okay, well, we can look into it later. I don't have a particular comment on it now. It means that he went on his way.
Okay, but like then they would say he went on his, like, I don't know, it feels like lifted his feet up is weird.
Maybe like he didn't drag his feet.
Yeah, he was keen to get there. Okay, cool. So we're happy with that. And basically, he sees a well in the fields, okay? And from the well, he would water the flocks. No, sorry, what am I saying? He sees a well in the field, and that is the well where the shepherds would all come to water their flocks. So he sees a whole bunch of shepherds gathered around the well, all of the sheep, but no one is watering because there is a big rock that is covered. Then he asks them about Lavan. And they say, yes, Lavan's here, he's all good, and his daughter Rachel is coming with the flock. Isn't that perfect timing? The well was a real like meeting spot. Everyone seems to be getting hitched by the well. So Rachel comes down and he sees her, and he says, "Look, I mean, it's late. Why aren't you why haven't you watered the flock yet?" And they say, "We can't yet until everyone gets here to roll off the stone." And it was, you see here a society that is so untrustworthy of the other that everyone gets together and puts a stone on the well so that nobody can take advantage. They all have to be there to take it off. So then he sees, so Yaakov sees Rachel and he comes forward. Listen to this, and rolls the stone off the mouth of the well. He waters the sheep of Lavan, his mother's brother. Then Yaakov kisses Rachel. He raises his voice and he weeps. Which is interesting because there is also raising. Wait, who was the last person who raises his voice and weeps? Esav, the brother who he had just stolen the blessing from. It's got the same words, and the words appear again very infamously in wait, is it? I might be mixing up two things because the thing that I was about to say now has just made me think that maybe the first thing I said is wrong. So feel free to fact check me. But the thing that I know for sure is right is that it says that he calls out an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and that exceedingly great, that wording comes again in the story of Purim, where the Jews call out like that. And it says that that was sort of because we know that
The Asav's call
Asaph calls
is
it
the
out.
same as the Purim story.
Exactly.
So this might not be the same.
That's why I'm thinking I might have gotten the wires crossed here. But the Purim thing's definitely the case. And that's because Amalek, and we'll see that actually come up here. So it also says why was he crying? So what was he so upset about? It says that no, Yaakov.
Yeah, okay.
Yaakov arrives at the well,
Yes.
kisses Rachel, and
Yes.
cries.
Okay, fine.
You are now fully.
You said Lavan at some point.
I'm so sorry.
And then I thought Lavan was kissing Rachel.
I'm so glad that you're here to set the record straight.
Lavan did not kiss Rachel.
Lavan did not kiss Rachel. Yaakov kissed Rachel.
Okay.
He said he was gonna feed the sheep of
Yes.
Lavan.
Okay, fine.
Exactly.
Fine, I've mixed up the characters.
Okay, fantastic. We are back in the game. So, basically, why was he sad? Why was he crying? And it says that if you remember the previous story, when his father, you know, when his father, when Eliezer went down to get his mother to marry his father, he arrived with literally all of Avram's possessions. He arrived incredibly wealthy, and that was part of like the enticement. But now he has run away from home. He has no money.
Yeah.
That comes later.
Okay.
There is much kissing.
Okay.
There's a lot of crying and there's a lot of kissing. It's a very emotional story. Okay, but you are right. That's the next sentence. The point is that why is he sad? Because it says that his brother wanted to kill him, but he didn't. Well, he couldn't. So he sends Eliphaz, his son, to run after him and kill him. But he has conflicted emotions because on the one hand, his father's told him to kill his uncle, but on the other hand, it's his uncle, and it says that he grew up with him and was taught by him and everything. So they reach a compromise where he steals everything that he has, so that he's like a completely poor person who is like a dead person. So that was kind of his way of fulfilling both of the things. And interestingly, Eliphaz is that basically Amalek comes from Eliphaz. So that's just an interesting backstory there. So anyway, Haran is very poor, which also explains why he had to end up working for their hand in marriage and then eventually for his wealth, all of that stuff. Well, we're not talking about it like that. We just mean that he didn't arrive with the dowry. Cool. So that is great. Then it was when Lavan heard the news of Yaakov's sister's son, he ran towards him, embraced him, and kissed him. There you go. Lavan also kisses him. And it says that why did he kiss him? Because he remembers what happened when Eliezer arrived with all of the, presents and diamonds and gold and stuff. And he thought that he might have been hiding
Diamonds in his teeth.
diamonds in his teeth. That is definitely a
That's a great story.
midrash, yeah. Midrash or Rashi, I forget. But regardless, it is interesting tidbits. And for those of you who have just joined us, when it comes to Midrash, the tagline is, believe that you're a fool, ignore it, you're a heretic. Okay, so we take them seriously because they are trying to teach us very real, deep truths, but we don't take them on their face value. That could be a Rashi and it could be anyway, but it's the same sort of a thing. No, it's not. Scratch that. I said that. Wow. Live recording is sometimes a bit of a panic. Okay, back into the content. No more riffing. So basically, then he says, "Stay with me," and he says, "What are your wages?" And basically he says, so I will work for you for 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. And the agreement is there. He works for 7 years and he says, my term is fulfilled. I will now have my wife, please. And he is tricked where Lavan gives Zilpah, who was the maidservant of Leah. So that was like the part of the trickery, is that he gave the other maidservant along with Leah, and he then basically realizes the next day that he has been married off to the daughter that he does not love. Oh, and I missed this. It says Lavan had 2 daughters. The name of the older one was Leah. Leah's eyes were tender while Rachel was of beautiful form. So Leah's eyes were tender. It says that she was crying a lot because it was destined that there were 2 sons, an older and a younger, and there were 2 daughters, an older and a younger. And so she was destined to marry the older son, Esav, and Rachel was destined to marry the younger son. And so she cried and cried and cried because she didn't want to marry Esav. And interestingly enough, who
She
ends up
davened.
getting...
The
yes,
point
she
is that she davened. She didn't really cry. She changed her face.
She changed her fate, she davened, and crying was definitely part of that. Thank you
I
very
know
much,
it was
Tanti.
part of it,
Okay,
but,
so
but she
the
also
interesting
does. You
tidbit,
can't just cry and expect things to also
yes,
just go well. You have to daven as well.
to clarify, it was a davening kind of a cry. It was very emotional and connected. So, also the interesting thing is that when he takes over the firstbornship, he sold that firstbornship and he gets the firstborn blessing and everything. He gets everything associated with the firstbornship. So he also gets Leah, which is interesting.
But like, was this like destined? She was supposed to marry Esav, or was it like people said, "Oh, she's supposed to marry Esav," but like if she didn't, who cares?
Destiny is an interesting thing. It says that what's it called? Ein Mazal Yisrael. So we do believe in destiny and luck and these things, but that we are above that. So what
Leah is the example of that. But
exactly. So the point is that there might have been a plan and a thing, and at the end of the day, it's human actions and human choices which determine how the plan unfolds.
But was it
So it's not set in
serious?
stone.
Was it serious?
I don't know, but I don't think it was. It was just like some light koching. I mean, we're talking about some very
Yes.
heavy things here. It's like Asaph was supposed to be a part of the solution. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like he was supposed to not be involved and be a bad guy and whatever. He was supposed to be that physical, like set. It was almost like a split where he was supposed to take over the physicality, and Yaakov was, he was the man of tents. He was supposed to take over the spirituality, and he was supposed to have those two driving forces, like in the world. And that's not how it panned out. We don't see. We forget that we know how the story ends, so we assume that that's always how it had to be. But not really. And there's like the example, I might not do it because I've done it a few times, but um, anyway. Okay, so there is a substitute and he is pretty upset. And so he says, such is not done in our place to give the younger before the elder. Complete the week of this one, so the Sheva brachas after you get married, and then we'll give you the other one too. And then you'll work for 7 years. So that was also something that I didn't realize until I read through it properly, is that it was 7 years work, then marry one week, marry the other, and then the other 7 years. So they actually got married right close together. But you hear the interesting little bit of like that little commentary that is giving him. It says, we don't do it here, giving the younger before the older. Like, I know what you did with the whole switching of the birthright and all of that stuff. Very interesting. So he what's it called? Gets married, and it says that he loves Rachel even more than Leah, which is a little bit harsh to read. Hashem sees that Leah was unloved, so he opens her womb and gives her children. And she starts giving birth. The factory is cooking. She gets 3 children out in a row, and it is Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda.
What about
Ruvain, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. Thank you very much. I missed the first one, and it did feel wrong. So we've got 4 kids over there, and Rachel hadn't given birth yet. So she, there's a little bit of a fight, a tiff between her and Yaakov. She says, "Give me children." He says, "I'm not God. Like, did I, stop up your womb?" Which apparently it wasn't such a great thing to have said. As a married man, I can attest that it probably was not the best move. So anyway, what does she do? She then gives Bila, which is her maidservants, to him to have children as like a fulfillment of her. So first, Leah has 4 kids. Then Rachel's maidservant has her kids, and it is Dan and Naphtali. So then she stops giving birth. So, Leah realizes that she's not having more kids. So then she does the same thing with her maidservants. Okay. So then from her maidservant, we get Gad and Asher. So this is the thing so far. We all caught up. Now, there's a little bit of an interlude. And Ruvain goes out. He's the oldest, and he collects these dudadim. And it's not clear what they are. It's a very unique word. Are they the flowers? Are they this? Are they that? But the point is, the story goes as follows, where Rachel says, please, can I have some of these? Am I saying it right? Dudaim. Please, can I have some of these, like that your son collected? And she says, listen to how she replies. Was your taking my husband insignificant? Now to even take my son's dudadim? And so Rachel, and it's like a fascinating thing that's happening here, because you don't realize it until you kind of there was something that was done to Leah here. She wasn't like, at the end of the day, she was married to him first. Once that happened, should he have gone through with marrying Rachel as well, and then not loving her as much? Like, she's been through a hell of a time here, and the one thing she has is her children. Now Rachel's coming and like wants a bit of that too. You can almost understand the pain in that interaction. But what happens is it's almost like Rachel understands it or something like that, because she then says, like, in exchange, like, it's his turn with me tonight, but he will go to you, something to that effect. And so Leah goes out to meet him and says, my turn. And then God listens to Leah. She conceives and bore Yaakov a fifth son. So now it was four, and then two, and now Leah's gone up to five. So she has by far the most children. Yisachar, well done.
Because that's the word.
And then she gets, because it's added, right? Yeah. No. Why did I try and do that? Okay, cool. So the next one after that is Zvulun. Okay, so now she is on 6 children, and then it says she bore a daughter called Dinah, the famous Dinah. So it says that Dinah was supposed to be a boy, because apparently all of it's also a midrash, all of them were born with a twin sister. I'm not sure, but it says that Dinah was supposed to be a boy, and she davened while she was still in the womb. Not she. Leah davened while Dinah was still in the womb that she would be a girl, not a boy, because if she was a boy, then Leah, Rachel would have only had one. She wouldn't have had the opportunity to be unequal in terms of the amount of children as even the maidservants, because the maidservants all had 2.
Right.
She already had 6, so they were on 10. There were supposed to be 12 kids, and so if she had an extra boy, then she would have been less than even the maidservants. Okay, cool. All makes sense. So then now Ruach HaKodesh. So God remembers Rachel. He listens to her, hearkens to her, opens her womb. So now she falls pregnant. And she calls him Yosef, which means adding. Says, may Hashem add on for me another son. Okay, that's the name of Joseph. And then it was when Rachel had given birth to Joseph. Oh, so listen to this. So it was when Rachel had given birth to Joseph. Then Yaakov says to Lavan, give me leave so that I might go to my place. Give me my wives, my children, etc. So now he decides that he's going to go home after Yaakov is born.
Yosef.
Thank you. Jeez, what would I do without you? And there are so many names. I'm glad you're keeping track. So then Lavan says to him that he's quite honest here, and he says, I've been blessed because of you. If you remember, his one daughter was leading Lavan's sheep to the watering hole. Like, there couldn't have been that many sheep at the beginning of the story. And now he's got flocks and flocks and flocks after Yaakov's been tending to them for the last
But there's midrashes with that.
14 years. I'm sure there are many midrashes.
Yeah.
Do you want to share something?
Yes.
Cool. What is
Basically, what happened was there was an arrangement that Yaakov could keep some of the flocks. I can't remember what exactly the arrangement was. Oh, is that about to come up? With the wells?
What?
With the wells?
Yeah.
Oh, is that not midrash?
Let's hear it now, and you tell me. So they come up with a little deal to say what is going to be paid. And he says that don't give me anything. I will keep pasturing, guarding your flocks. But every speckled or spotted lamb, every brown lamb, every spotted or speckled among the goats, that will be my wage. So they designate that the certain types of animals, they had to, like, speckled, spotted, whatever, they have different colorations. Those would be the ones that he would keep.
Are they less good? Like others?
So I know that Rabbi Jax, yeah, he loves this. He talks about it every year on camp. About basically, we see here the Torah's understanding of genetics and hereditary and things like that, which is fascinating. Because at the beginning it says, remove from there every speckled or spotted lamb. So they maybe that's where it was. Anyway, the point is that, like, these genes are recessive, and so you wouldn't necessarily expect to see a child of a white sheep come out spotted. But that is what has something to that effect. I don't know. Contact Rabbi Jax for his spiel on it, but it is
He's probably speaking about it.
might be.
Shabbos, should we go?
It is a proper thing though. You can just Google it. I just haven't looked at it recently, so I'm not equipped to give it over. So anyway, they do that. They remove it and puts a distance of 3 days between them. Then he takes these rods and he heals them, and he sets the rods up by the watering like troughs. And when the animals come to drink in the troughs, they look at the rods, and then they are mounted by the other animals, and they produce spotted and speckled sheep. Do not ask me what it means. I'm not entirely sure. For next year. And anyway, he becomes incredibly wealthy. Then he hears the words of Lavan's son saying, Yaakov has taken everything that belonged to us. They've forgotten that it all came from him. They don't have that's what's it called? Uh, I want to say hakarata tov, but I don't know what the English word is. Gratitude. Thank you. They don't have that gratitude. And what's interesting, and so now they turn against him. And it's interesting because we see here, this is the pattern of Jewish life throughout history. We would go to a place, we would develop, be a part of the infrastructure, become wealthy, through all of our contributions. Then they would become jealous, kick us out, and you saw decline. Like the Spanish Armada was insane. Okay, it was enormous. It was at the height of power. Why did Spain just kind of disappear off the face of the earth? Like in terms of their significance in the maritime affairs and things like that. And it was relatively soon after the Spanish Inquisition and expulsion. It's actually a very cool thing you can follow throughout history. There's a lot of different examples like that. So the point is, they decide they're going to go. So Yaakov then goes and he speaks to his wives and he tells them, your dad, isn't treating us like he was once, and he changed my wages 100 times, and I think it's time that we leave. And basically, they say we're with you. Let's go. He arises, leaves, takes his children and all that he amassed, and then he goes away. And then Lavan hears. This is the powerful one. Okay, who knows what I'm talking about? Vayugad le Lavan ki barach et Yaakov. Oh, you're blanking on that. Sick. I get to do it again. Okay, cool. So he is told that I'll just close up quickly.
Yeah.
No, I've done it before. It just means you weren't paying attention. So,
I think that's true.
yes, you probably just weren't here. So, anyway, it says that it was told to Lavan that Yaakov had run away. So he takes the people and he chases after them and he catches up with them and all of these things. And then they have a whole discussion. And he says, "Why did you steal them from me?" And why did you go away sneakily? And he says, "Because I was scared." They have a whole conversation, and then he says, "Why did you steal my trafim, these idols?" And so he then Lavan goes through looking for his idols, and he checks in the tents and everything, but he doesn't check under Leah's pack saddle because she's thank you. Just what is going on with me? So he doesn't check under Rachel's pack saddle pack saddle, because she says it is her time of the month, the way of the woman is upon me, and so he does not mess with that. But that was where she was hiding her the idols, which works out being really bad because what does Yaakov say? He says anyone who took this will die, and that is supposedly why she dies not soon afterwards, not too long afterwards, before they enter the land of Israel. Just quite hectic. It just goes to show how important what we say is. Anyway, they are at Gilad, which is interesting because it is a place that is also marked in a few other parts in the Torah, if I'm not mistaken. It's also, yeah, it is. It's the last place that stories kind of happen before Dvarim. the book of Dvarim, which is more of a recap of the Torah. So it's actually quite a significant spot. And then, anyway, it closes off. They break bread, they have a feast, and Lavan wakes in the morning, kisses his sons and daughters. There's much kissing in the story, and they call this place Mahanaim, and that is the end of the Pasha. So the cool thing, basically, it says, Vayugad le X kibarach et wa. Cool. This formulation appears another time. Where does it appear?
When, Ziv?
Thank you. It says, Vayugad le melech Mitzrayim ki barach et ha'am.
Oh.
It was told to Pharaoh that the nation ran away. Okay, cool. That's one connection. But turns out in that sentence, you have another 5 linguistic connections with the exact words. So like I said, they caught and overtook and, all of those words, you see those exact ones appear in sequence. So honestly, like grab this, read the 2 side by side, and you'll see the words popping up. It's like the same story mapped onto each other. But it gets even cooler than that because he leaves. Remember, he works for 7 years for the first wife. So he works 7 years for Leah, 7 years for Rachel, proving to you that I do know their names. And then he works 7 years for his income, which means he worked there for how many years? Exactly. He left in the 21st year. Okay. The Jews left Egypt after 210 years. So we see the like mini scale happening on a macro scale. Exactly. What's it called? At the end of we're going to get to it next week, but what happens? He crosses the river. What do?
They cross the sea.
They cross the sea. He gets attacked by the angel of Esav, which is that Amalek energy. They get attacked by Amalek. It's wild. So you've got these parallels where the same story is repeating itself from a like personal familial level into a national level. And just to interject, this is all Aleph Beta stuff, Rabbi Foreman. It's phenomenal. So that's basically what's happening there in terms of the outgoing thing. And then this is what he says: is that if the way we exited Egypt and the way we exited house, okay, parallel, then what about how we got there? Are there any connections there in terms of how we actually arrived at these places? So it says, sorry, I just got distracted. Yeah, something put on the screen. So the very cool thing is that, yes, it is completely connected. So how did we end up in Egypt? No, let's, what's the order to do this in? I haven't done this in a while. Okay, cool. So we go down to Egypt because of Joseph. Joseph gets sold. He then ends up in Egypt. Because he's in Egypt, when there's a famine, he brings the family over. The family stays there and then are eventually enslaved. So it's Joseph going down to Egypt, which is the precursor to the whole slavery story. Okay? Now, why did Joseph end up down in Egypt? Because his brothers, there was that whole thing, they sold him. So let's zoom into that story. And the way that, sorry for the glitch, some technical difficulties. So, down to Egypt. He is sold to slavery. What could be said about that, but he goes down to Egypt. Now, what's the story behind that? Rabbi Foreman calls it the coats and the goats. Okay, so what's the story? His brothers slaughter a goat, get the blood, dip his coats into the blood, and that is what they use to deceive their father. So you've got a story of deception involving coats and goats. Now, what did we just come from? What was the story of last week's Parsha that has led us here? How does he end up getting exiled to Lavan's house?
Coats and goats.
Coats and goats. He wears the coat of his brother. Okay, remember, Kol Yaakov Hayadam Yedei Esav. It's got the feeling of Esav. Wears the coat. He slaughters the goat, or his mom cooks it, and then he feeds it. It's like to deceive the father. It's the exact same story, which is wild. So it all comes together now with something that we pointed out. Very cool, yeah, very coincidental. So yes, I know it's a coincidence, like how people say.
Things.
We know it's a joke. It's like, oh
Sorry.
wow, that's such a coincidence.
Hey, sorry, Zero.
Yeah, cool. So the point is that it was something that we pointed out earlier in the talk, which was, what is the point that he decides to go home after who is born?
Yourself.
Exactly. So what's the turning point there? Remember, everyone knows family. Do you know what I mean? God coming and speaking to Grandpappy is like a big freaking deal. I think everyone's going to know what was like the contents of the conversation, right? The point is that everyone knew the what's it called, the not prophecy, whatever, the promise that was given that that they would be enslaved in a land, far away, and all of these things. And part of it was that the fourth generation would return. So now you recognize that Yaakov, he thinks that this prophecy applies to him because he was enslaved. All of these things are applying, and it's after this fourth generation, so after the child of his beloved wife, who he considers his actual wife, is born. That's when he considers that the time's up, it's time to go home. Cool. And like Shane, poor Yaakov, he like got it wrong. Obviously that wasn't it, or was it? Bum bum bum. And that's the wild thing, is that it totally could have been. That could have been the fulfillment of the prophecy. But it wasn't, because people ended up making the same mistakes that their ancestors did. They repeated it. They didn't learn. There were brothers fighting against brothers. There was all sorts of things, like issues. And so the incredible thing is, like, and that's why Rabbi Foreman talks about it backwards. Because we're reading the Torah like this, we kind of started with the end in mind, but he gives this over in the Pesach Shiur because we thank Hashem for taking us out of slavery. And the obvious question is, well, thank him. He put us there. And the answer is here. He didn't put us there. We put us there. We didn't have to go there. It was our choices that ended with us being there. And what's his promise? Is that even when you mess up, I will always be there and I'll take you out. And that is it for this week's Parsha. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.